Field very deep again.
This ball hit deep to left. It's got a chance. To the track. To the wall. Albert does it again. Albert Pujols has beaten the Cubs back-to-back days. And this crowd is going crazy here at Busch Stadium. His teammates greet him at home plate. Home run number 13, number 51 against the Cubs. Listen to this crowd.
And gone. Wetland one more time set. And here comes the 2-2 pitch to Edgar Martinez down. A fastball swung on and into deep center field. Bernie Williams goes back, and it is get out the rye bread and the mustard this time, Grandma. It is a grand salami, and the Mariners lead it 10-6. I don't believe it. My, oh my.
From high atop the Robinson Viewing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
Good moment, baseball universe. What is up? It's your boy, half man, half podcast machine, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. Back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's edition of Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Please remember to smash those subscribe and follow icons, as I'm available on pretty much all major podcast platforms, wherever you listen to your pods. Spotify, Apple users, please rate and review me as you see fit. I ain't scared. And you can also visit the show website at diamondsnakejake.podbean.com. And at some point, I have a vision for that site, but for now, it's just a good place to stash my archives. So if you want to check it out, go to that website, diamondsnakejake.podbean.com. And before we get started, I want to thank everyone that gave me that warm feedback on last week's show, The Big Red Machine. It is my best release week thus far, as the shows continue to grow. So to the audience, I say 1,000 times, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, look, the train rolls on. My audience has spoken. I get to keep the gig for another week. And before we get started, I want to go back to something that I've said before here on Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. I don't just collect ball players. I collect stadiums. I collect baseball, media, pop culture. Even mascots at some point are going to make the collection here. My vision for this passion project endeavor from the beginning was to eventually, at some point, become much like this digital audio version of Baseball Wikipedia. And in order to go where I'm trying to go, I got to step out of my comfort zone a little bit, really push myself, really invest myself into topics that sometimes I'm not that familiar with. And, you know, it's time to go out and chase the story. And my fellow Seamheads, I can tell you that that's been the biggest thrill on this run so far. It's learning more and more about this game that I've been watching since I was 7. And this week will be no different, as I really stepped out of that comfort zone. Ladies and gentlemen, today's topic is baseball in the Dominican Republic. And let's be honest, all I ever really knew about Dominican baseball was that I love the brand. And while baseball may no longer be the national pastime in the United States, it is most certainly still a pan-Caribbean passion. No country has used baseball more to tell their story to the world. The story of perseverance, about people who work hard cutting through sugarcane. A nation that endured 31 years of Rafael Trujillo's dictatorship and withstood occupation of foreign powers 3 times. No nation of comparable size has had the singular MLB experience or success, even though they were denied access to Major League Baseball until it integrated in 1947. The Dominicans have created a sporting world of their own. Baseball has galvanized and brought those people together, creating a sense of national identity rooted in competition and achievement. In the early 1800s, English colonists would play and teach the Dominicans how to play cricket. But the history of baseball in the DR, it actually begins in Cuba. On October 10th, 1868, Havana sugar mill owner Carlos Manuel de Cespedes and his followers proclaimed independence from Spain. And this spawned an uprising, a rebellion against the Spanish crown. And it would usher in the 10-year war. And this would be the first of 3 liberation wars Cuba would wage against Spain. But during this 10-year war, Cuban refugees began immigrating in droves to the Dominican Republic. And they brought with them the game of baseball, or pelota. And please, I don't want anyone to be offended by my Spanish. Hopefully I don't butcher the words here, but I want to keep it authentic, baby. So I don't mean any disrespect. I come at you with total respect. I have respect for your country and your traditions. At the turn of the century, going into the 1900s, baseball it wasn't really big on the island yet. It was a marginal sport. And that was partly due to the mass political turmoil and uncertainty in the country at the time. However, 2 teams sprang up in 1890. Their names were Ozama and Nuevo Club. On November 7th, 1907, Tigres de Licey was founded in Santo Domingo. Tigres, of course, being the Tigers. And for the next decade and a half, Licey was such a powerful squad that 3 rival teams, San Carlos, Los Muchachos, and Delco Light, combined forces to establish a super team. They would call that team Escogido, or the Chosen One. And the 2 teams have been rivals ever since. 2 other teams were established, Estrella Orientalis, or the Stars. That was in 1910. And Sandino in 1921. They would later change their name to Aguilas Sabanas in 1937. Dictator Rafael Leonidas Trujillo served as the Republic's president from 1930 to 1938. Let me see here. And again from 1941 to 1952. And during his first term, he oversaw the modernization of the Dominican Republic, and he undertook many public work projects, including baseball stadiums. In 1937, he merged Licey and Escogido into one for the upcoming season. And that new team would be called the Dragones de Ciudad Trujillo. And it featured, top shelf Negro Leagues talent and Latin players of the day. Legends like Satchel Paige. Yeah, he could make up to like $15,000 a summer to pitch for the club. And $15,000 in 1937 is equivalent to around $293,000 in the 2022 economy. And soon other players like Sam Bankhead, Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, Leroy Matlock, they would join Trujillo's ball team. Opening day, March 28, 1937. Sabanez, behind the arm of Negro League chef Brewer, no-hit page, and the Dragones in a 4-2 game. In July, Guidad Trujillo won the championship with an 18-13 record. Josh Gibson led the league in average in RBIs with a .453 average and 21 ribs. Negro League superstar Martin DeHigo, the Shohei Ohtani of his day, he dazzled the Dominicans with his dual-threat skill set, smashed 4 home runs for Sabanez, and his win-loss record of 6-4 was second only to Satch's 8-2. After the season, the league collapsed. The players returned home, and Trujillo was ousted, and he would remain dormant for the next 14 years. The modern Dominican League was founded in 1951, and it's called LIDOM, which is an acronym for La Liga Profesional de Béisbol de la República Dominicana. The season starts in mid-October, and it runs to the end of December. And it's basically split into 3 stages. To start, the 6 teams play in a schedule of 50 games. Then, the top 4 teams will play another 18 games against each other. Finally, the 2 teams that are left, they play it out in a best-of-9 series. And the winner of that series represents the DR in the Caribbean Series against top teams from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, and Cuba. There are 6 teams of LIDOM. 2 teams of Santo Domingo, Tigres del Licey, and Leones del Escogido. Estrella Orientale is from San Pedro de Macorís. Aguila Sabanez plays in Santiago. Toros del Este of La Romana. And the Gigantes, the Giants del Cibao from San Francisco de Macorís. Estadio Cibao is the league's largest stadium with a seating capacity of 18,077 fans. Baseball players in the Dominican are like fine backwoods spirits that have been like illegally mashed up and distilled. Beautiful ball players. By the 1930s, baseball had grown into a big money sport in the Dominican. Soon, scouts would begin to scour the country for the talented youth. Basically, a third of all foreign-born Major League Baseball players come from this country, with a population of 10.4 million people. In 2021, there were 98 Dominican-born players in the big leagues, out of 906 total. That's 11%. Venezuela had the second most foreign-born players with 64, and the Cubans were third at 19. And I'm going to tell you, in the minors, it's not uncommon to see even higher numbers. By my count, 44% of the players on the first 2 levels of just the Chicago White Sox farm are foreign-born players, which is staggering to me, considering all the resources and coaching and dietary strategies. All these things are afforded to American kids. But there's 44% foreign-born players on the Chicago White Sox. You know, like the first 2 levels. I looked at the low A and the high A. There is 1 Dominican big leaguer for every 63,000 people. Compare that to 1 big leaguer for every 307,000 people here in the United States. The Dominicans produce Major League Baseball talent at about 5 times the rate of the United States. Now, the average adult salary in the Dominican Republic is around $5,000 a year. The country itself has a GDP of $64 billion, and baseball brings in about $1 billion a year to the Dominican Republic. It is estimated that Dominican players earn approximately $400 million in Major League Baseball. Players in the minors, They earned another $200 million, and a lot of that money does, in fact, make it back to the island. And that's why these kids look up to these Dominican players like superheroes. Pedro Martinez, while he was pitching for Boston, said 15 years ago, I was sitting under a mango tree scrounging for 20-cent bus fare. He returned home after his career, and he totally rebuilt his old neighborhood. Look at Vladimir Guerrero. He returns home. He becomes this highly successful entrepreneur. And now he's employing scores of people, hundreds of people. And you hear these prodigal native son stories all the time when it comes to that island. All 30 Major League Baseball teams have training and recruitment facilities in the country that brings in thousands and thousands of talented youth. The Dominican Republic has a thriving baseball industry, and it will exist as long as Major League Baseball is a viable league. All these facilities, they need trainers, tutors, coaches, food, equipment suppliers. The Dominican Republic has become a training ground for much of the region. Venezuelans, Panamanians, Nicaraguans, Mexicans, and Cubans. They all go there to train. And here's the thing, only 2% of kids who go to these training facilities make a living playing baseball. Many of the boys end up without a proper education after leaving school early to pursue baseball. So, what is it that motivates these young boys to take a chance against these crazy odds? Well, they don't just necessarily want it. They need it. And an interesting thing happens when you flip the switch from want to needs. The Dominicans focus on developing talent. Not so much winning games. They want you to throw with everything like your Pedro, swing out of your shoes like your Big Papi. And that's why in the minors, you see what you see. These kids, we call them unpolished gems when they arrive in rookie ball. You see the hard throwers, free swinging players. And they are products of their culture. This is what got them there. It's very rare to see a Dominican in pro ball who didn't sign for at least $50,000 to $100,000, which is potentially life-changing cash when, you make $5,000 a year. They've already won just by being there, is what I'm saying. And there's an interesting phenomenon that happens in the baseball universe, and that is the existence of baseball hotbeds. And the Dominican Republic is a hotbed. So is Cuba, Venezuela. In the United States, we got Texas, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, SoCal. They are cranking out disproportionately high crop of, this top-shelf liquor talent. And certainly factors like population density and year-round climate, they're factors that no doubt contribute to these results. But I propose there are other pieces of the equation that most people don't even factor in. I'm talking about, competition and motor learning. The competition, it breeds a higher caliber of athlete. As the caliber of player reaches a certain threshold, this creates a positive feedback loop. Better players push everyone else to train. I mean, you got to, just to stay on par with your competition. A player who is dominating a lesser geographical region, he cannot afford to take his foot off the gas or the success will be short-lived. For example, this is what I mean. An 84-mile-per-hour pitcher who is undefeated playing in, say, Dover, Delaware. He may get fat off of that feasting and leave the table satisfied and then begin to fall off. It's inevitable. But that same pitcher, 84 mile per hour, high school kid, he may struggle in Texas just to make the JV team, forcing him to keep pressing and improving himself. Competition breeds competition. And it breeds better players. Motor learning, well, that motor learning occurs through imitation. In other words, most of us seam heads, we can trace back to when we started having higher levels of throwing, hitting, and other baseball-specific skills. And that's when we began to mimic coaches, teammates, and competition during our development, particularly in our early stages of our development. And once we learn these patterns of body movement, it is then at that point that they're reinforced and for some extent refined through repetition. And my point is this: athletes who are surrounded by higher level athletes and body patterns, they tend to have a better opportunity and chance of developing higher level patterns themselves. And I don't just mean body patterns. I mean how you carry yourself, how you prepare. You feed off of one another if you have good teammates who are about these things. Athletes who are surrounded by non-competitive low-level patterns from a young age are at a massive disadvantage to go far in the sport. Child A, let's call him Tony. Grew up in small-town USA, learning to play catch in the front yard with his pops. And he's only seen the patterns expressed by other athletes in his, highly contained intramural Little League. Okay? Child B, let's call him Kenny. He grows up in a minor league locker room. He learns to hit and throw with elite players, and he observes and he mimics these patterns, body patterns, and preparedness patterns, and follows them for a decade. It's no mystery who is going to end up with the better patterns. 999 times out of 1,000, it's going to be Kenny. So, this point applies to all sports. For example, long-distance runners from Kenya, sprinters from Jamaica, soccer players from Brazil, hockey players from the Czech Republic. Competition breeds better players, and better motor learning breeds better players. The dream of being a major leaguer in the Dominican Republic, it's sustained through a complex system of identifying and developing amateur talent and then signing them to pro contracts. It's crucial to have infrastructure that not only develops a young boy's baseball skills, but the education as well, because the odds are long, 2%. Not every kid can be Pedro or Big Papi. Make sure these kids are educated and in safe environments near their homes where they can play in safe and organized ways. Baseball is a defining feature of the Dominican Republic's national identity. But those who don't make it big are often exploited by a system that prioritizes money over people. And what happens is these young kids, it ignites a feeding frenzy by those seeking to profit from juvenile talent. And ignite, a power struggle among Dominicans, foreign investors, Major League Baseball. I mean, MLB's craving for talent has spawned a profitable youth market that at times, gives off shady optics of child trafficking, quite honestly. And in my opinion, two Major League Baseball policies make this predatory environment possible. Number one, Major League Baseball prevents boys from signing contracts until they're 17 years old. This creates an opening for these self-styled trainers known as buscones. They run around the barrio, they snatch these boys up when they're as young as 13. They're there to develop their talents and then peddle them to the Major League Baseball system when they're 17. Boys usually stop going to school when they train with the Buscones. And more than 1,000 of these Buscones, they walk the hoods and they get their hooks into these boys. They can hopefully use at some point as bargaining chips, sellable commodities. And as a reward for his speculative investment, the Buscone makes, like a third of the kid's bonus contract if he signs. Several people operate these academies. They're sometimes backed by U.S. investors and agents. And they basically just look at some of these kids as a future market, future commodity for a future market. These higher-end facilities, they offer comfortable quarters, competent instruction, but many of these are, decrepit accommodations, and there's literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of defenseless boys. And I'm not here to tell you that all these Buscones are terrible. Not all are parasites. Some are good men. They feed, they care for them, they make them better ball players, they create a market for their services, and they drive up signing bonuses. But other Buscones, man, they're nothing more than blood-sucking leeches. Some of them steal from their boys. They involve them in fraudulent scandals. They might even administer PEDs. Others falsify birth certificates to lower ages, knowing that ball clubs pay more for younger prospects. And if the kid is discovered participating in this abhorrent behavior, he could lose his bonus and be banned for a period from signing a contract. So that's one problem. The second problem is it exempts Dominican citizens from the MLB amateur draft. And that means they begin their careers as free agents. Consequently, there's competitive bidding for the services. It drives signing bonuses. And it makes these guys very, very well sought after. The guys on the high end, of course, right? And honestly, Major League Baseball profited immensely from Caribbean ball players signing them by the hundreds on the cheap. Juan Marichal signed for $500 in the 50s. Pedro received $6,500 in 1988. But most boys are soon released as few make it to the majors. And again, most of these boys quit school at the age of 13. As MLB became an economic powerhouse, Buscones were able to create bidding wars for elite prospects. Signing bonuses soared in the 90s. Some of them went as high as $3 million. Teams began to balk at such sums. Nor did they enjoy, being made fools of when steroid-enhanced home runs turn into lazy fly balls, or a player lose 10 miles per hour after he stops juicing. And quite honestly, some of these players weren't either who they claim to be or their posted age. So there's some shady shit. And these type of issues, they spurred MLB to try and police Dominican baseball and restore its profitable dominion. In 2010, baseball began cracking down on corruption. Yada, yada, yada. Drug testing, rigorous background checks, and led teams to avoid millions of dollars in signing bonuses. The Buscones, however, they still rule with impunity. As MLB quickly discovered, these dudes are they're way too entrenched to totally, eliminate. MLB did cap the amount a team can spend on international signings. And the 2022 baseball lockout, it did provide an opening to the international players as part of the MLB amateur draft. Some players like Fernando Tatis Jr. of the Padres are adamantly against this, while others like David Ortiz are not opposed, but they'd like to see the MLB really take their time and do this right. I believe that new CBA, it states that 2024 would be the beginning of this experiment, but both sides have been pretty quiet about this development, and I think it's going to be a wait-and-see kind of vibe. It's going to happen, but I think they're really thinking about how can we do it so that everyone gets a little bit of what they want here. While some Dominicans condemn the Buscones for exploiting the kids, many have laid the blame on Major League Baseball's doorsteps, quite honestly. Some MLB employees have been fired for conniving with these Buscones, taking advantage of boys. Some guys like Felipe and Moises Alou, Omar Minaya, Manny Acta, they have proven themselves as managers, GMs, owners, and winner and Major League Baseball. And they've taken ownership of the game down there, but they have not attempted to rid the country of Buscones. So just a little bit of what's going on there, how it happens there. And before we get out of here, there is one Dominican player out of all the great Dominicans that we've seen. There's one that we should really talk about here. His name was Osvaldo Jose Pichardo Virgil. Ozzie Virgil Sr. He was born May 17th, 1932, in Monte Cristi, Dominican Republic. He would go on to break the color line for the Detroit Tigers in 1958, and he became the first Dominican in the major leagues. 11 seasons after Jackie Robinson's integrated the big leagues with the Brooklyn Dodgers. His family moved to the Boogie Down Bronx when he was 13, and he attended DeWitt Clinton High School. Now, he didn't make his high school baseball team, but he did play sandlot ball, and he played a little bit down in Puerto Rico. After high school, Virgil joined the United States Marine Corps Reserves. They called him up to active duty, and he played baseball with the Marine Corps team at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. If you remember back for the Roberto Clemente story, our very first one, he also played at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. When he left the Marines, the New York Giants gave him a contract and they signed him. Virgil did his tour in the minors first, playing in St. Cloud, Minnesota. That was in the Northern League. He then moved on to Danville, North Carolina, in the Piedmont League, where he hit .291. And a little past midseason, he was hitting .309 for Dallas in the Texas League. He led all third basemen in the Texas League with a .975 fielding percentage, and he was named to the All-Star team. He then went on to play winter ball in Puerto Rico. And after spending most of the 1956 season on the farm in Minneapolis, he would hit .278 there with 10 home runs, 73 ribs. Virgil made his Major League Baseball debut with the Giants of September 23rd. He appeared in 3 games, collecting 5 hits and 12 at-bats. Not bad. Becoming the first Dominican to make it to the show and establishing a national lineage that reads like a who's who. Before the 1958 season, Virgil was dealt to the Tigers, along with Gale Harris, for infielder Jim Finnegan and $25,000 in cash. Virgil had earned a spot on the Tigers roster, and in his Briggs Stadium debut on June 17th, 1958, he went 5 for 5. During the 1961 season, the Tigers traded Virgil to the Kansas City A's. He would eventually serve brief stints with the Orioles, Pirates, and Giants while shuttling between the majors and the minor leagues. Virgil retired after the 1968 season. He never appeared in more than 96 games in a season, but he should always be remembered, for paving the future to the MLB for his fellow countrymen. He truly is the Jackie Robinson of Dominican ball players. In 1968, he became a player coach for the Giants AAA affiliate in Phoenix, Arizona. After that season, Giants manager Clyde King named him coach for the big club. And at that time, he was one of only 4 black coaches in Major League Baseball, along with Elston Howard of the New York Yankees, Jim Gilliam of the Dodgers, and Luke Easter for the Tribe. There were no black managers, GMs, and very few people of color in Major League front offices. Osvaldo's hiring was a testament to his high esteem that the Giants had of him, his tutoring of prospects and young players, and he actually helped the Giants take the NL West crown in 1971. During subsequent decades, he led a nomadic kind of baseball existence as a Major League coach, scout, and Winter League manager. He won the pennant managing Aguilas in the Dominican League during 1971 and 72, as well as Caracas in the Venezuela League. He also coached for the Padres, Expos, and Mariners. Virgil's son, Ozzie Jr., he played in the Major Leagues from 1988 to 1990, most prominently with the Phillies. And in 2004, his grandson, Jose, was selected by the St. Louis Cardinals in the 18th round of the 2008 MLB Amateur Draft out of Oklahoma University. Ozzie Virgil's final stat line: 9 years of Major League Baseball service. He played for the Giants, Tigers, Pirates, Orioles, and Royals. 324 games, 798 plate appearances, 75 runs, 174 hits, 19 doubles, 7 triples, 14 home runs, 73 RBIs. He had a 231, 331, 594 slash, and a 59 OPS plus. And though Ozzie never became a superstar, his Dominican legacy, it should never be forgotten. And it isn't by his countrymen and women. The lineage of all those beautiful ball players: Pujols, Manny, Pedro, Vlad, both of them, Marichal, Moises, Papi, to today's Kings, Tatis, Devers, Soto, all of them made possible by this man right here, Ozzie Virgil Sr. And I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. I hope you enjoyed this week's show, as we will be traveling throughout the world all summer long. I'm going to take a look at different baseball cultures around the globe. Countries like the Netherlands, Japan, Venezuela, Cuba, and more. So strap in. That's going to go down, all during the summer. I'm going to take a look at some of these countries. And I got to be honest, I'm kind of adopted Estrellas Orientales as my team. And I'm so ready to hang out in San Margarita. I would love to do it, man. Bucket list. Go down there, sip on some Mama Juana, munch on some tostones. Yeah, man, that sounds like a day to me. I would love to do it. I want to thank Aldo Rosario Jr. for helping me out all week with pronunciations and questions. I certainly appreciate you, brother. And to the rest of you, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, and preview as you see fit. You can find us on Twitter at _K_podcast. Or on Facebook and YouTube at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network group pages. Now, I'm going to summon my inner Bob Ryan, if any of you are familiar with Entourage. And I want to ask you a question. If I were to tell you that I know a true story about 3 former major leaguers whose Little League traveling manager used to rob banks to finance the team, would you be interested in hearing that story? Of course you would. But hey, that's another story for another pod. And it's true. The Mutt and Jeff Bandits, you're not going to believe this story at all. But like I said, that's another story for another pod. And look, another story in the archives, and the train rolls on. Parents, if you see your kid sitting on the couch looking bored, by all means, take him or her outside and play a game of catch. Thank you all for coming out. God bless and good night.